Welcome to the Preserving Family Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to equip you to gain insight, information, and inspiration to help you protect, teach, and guide your family during these turbulent times. Our goal is to provide tools and resources to help you strengthen and preserve your own marriages and families. Now here are your hosts, Dr. Mark and Janie Ogletree.
Everyone, we are so grateful to be with you today. We're always think it's a great opportunity to talk about the family and how to strengthen the family. And today our focus is going to be on grandparenting, but don't tune out if you're not a grandparent, because our focus is going to be on the grandparent relationship with their adult children and, of course, with their grandchildren. But I think our topic is going to be 12 things that grandparents should never do if they want to be good grandparents, right? If they want to have a good, strong family.
And I think it goes both ways too. So if you're not a grandparent, if you are an adult child or even are raising children and have grandparents in their lives, I think there's a lot that we can all learn from this topic.
Yeah. And by the way, Janie, I know you're going to talk about some of the data on why grandparents are really important. Just to start off, we want to make that case, right? The really good, just like parents, good, healthy parents could make a real difference in the lives of their children. Not all parents make a great difference, because some parents are not great parents. Some parents are toxic or whatever. And some grandparents are not awesome. But the good news is we can become that way, right? We can change and we can work on it. But this is the data that I wanted to share with you. And by the way, this is just from our book, Intentional Grandparenting, that I was able to write with Randall Wright a few months ago. And that was actually a fun project for us. About 40% believe that their grandparents were very influential in their lives. And 43% of grandparents say that their grandchildren have actually been influential in their life. In other words, there are some great benefits from this relationship.
Absolutely. Being a grandparent is one of the greatest adventures we've ever had, right?
No one ever told us how awesome it would be, but it actually has been very awesome.
Yeah,
right?
and we can totally say that our grandkids have taught us so much.
Right.
And just brought so much joy to our lives. But just a few statistics on the importance of grandparenting. And then we've talked about this before, how some people, like I think in our generation, our grandparents were around, and one set, because we lived closer to them, had way more of a powerful influence in my life than others that I didn't see very much. But I think grandparents today have the opportunity, because of, even if it's long distance, because of social media, Facebook, FaceTime, of Zoom, whatever, we can have way more contact with our grandchildren than generations past.
I think that's so true. You know, I just think of, like you, Janie, I think of my own grandparents, and I think in their mind, if they saw us at Christmas time once a year, they could check the box and say, yep, but the daily or weekly or regular influence just wasn't there, right?
Right. And there's so many studies today showing how important the grandparent role is in a child's life. And kids that have involved grandparents have 30% lower risk of depression and fewer behavioral issues and way higher empathy just by having involved grandparents in their lives.
Wow.
Also, neuroscience calls them grandparents resilience builders, that when life gets overwhelming, grandparents aren't just there to be the extra help. They're there to help. They're like the second line of defense in a child's life. They're like the cheerleaders on the sideline when the parents maybe are overwhelmed or, have so much going on. They're the disciplinarians. They have to take care of all the mundane stuff. But grandparents can just love and cheer and be the welcoming arms, for children.
You know, Janie, as you were reading those, one of the things that I always think about when we think of grandparenting is, I just always think of my grandparents as super old. I don't know how you think of yours, and they really weren't. I mean, they were in their 60s and 70s, but in today's years, I think that would translate to 80s or 90s. I mean, they just really weren't that active, weren't that mobile. I mean, we had a grandfather that rode bikes with us and things like that, but I think that was probably pretty rare in those days. But now when you think about it, we're healthier, I think, in a lot of ways. I mean, grandparents play in pickleball tournaments now, and they exercise and they run marathons. And
you're skiing with our grandkids,
Yeah, we ski. We do all these fun things with them. But what all that kind of translates to is now there's maybe more involvement than previous generations. And when there's more involvement, there's the risk of being incredible influences, but also maybe nuisances too, if there's too much involvement. And so, like we said a minute ago, we were going to talk about 12 things that grandparents just should never, ever do. And I thought I could maybe transition into the first one. And that is that you just don't ever criticize your children, right? Your adult children. That would be in the area of what they name their baby, how they choose to parent, the kind of life they choose to live. It's so funny, but I've heard these stories of grandmothers disapproving of names for babies, or grandparents getting super involved in how their children are raising the grandchildren, or things along those lines. And I'm sure, Janie, you have maybe some things you've seen there, or some examples, but maybe this over-involvement, when in reality, grandparents, we don't have a say. Our job is, when they choose that name, is to just cheer and say, that's wonderful. Whatever you call the baby, whatever you name the baby, we're on board, right?
Well, I think that's number one for a reason. I think if you go in and criticize your daughter-in-law or your son-in-law or whatever their family, that is the number one relationship killer.
Yeah.
If you're going to go in and criticize anything that they
On
do, the way they
anything.
keep their house, the way that what they feed their children, how they dress their children,
What time they go to bed,
anything,
what time they wake up.
then you're immediately going to kill that relationship.
Right. And why would anyone want to hang out with anybody who's critical, right? We just don't want to.
And we hear and see that so much.
Yeah.
And hear complaints about that so much. And I know you do in your counseling practice a ton.
Yeah. I mean, I actually have adult children in their 30s and 40s that just don't want anything to do with their parents. And they don't even want their parents around their children because their parents are just so critical of everything. So I love this replacement behavior. For every one of these, we have like an option, because we all want to improve and be better at this. But the idea is to celebrate every choice, celebrate their names, celebrate their schedule, celebrate how they raise their children, praise them for all the good things that you're seeing. And if it's something that's not so good, you learn to just keep your mouth shut, right? You just don't say anything.
Unless they ask you, right?
Yeah. And if they ask you, that's a different story. Then we're happy to share, right?
Right. And we're not saying that we're the experts on all of these. I think we've learned every one of these.
We've had to learn
by the hard way, by messing up or,
overstepping our bounds, maybe. Yeah.
But we have learned that over the years that you just keep your mouth shut and you be the cheerleader, you cheer them on, you encourage, unless it's something like criminal or harmful or, something like that that's legitimate. So principle number 2 is, as grandparents, if we want to destroy relationships, this is hard putting it in the negative, right?
Yeah, we're getting really good at that.
Go in and undermine all the household rules, don't enforce discipline, go against the parents' rules, and
you got yourself a disaster. Yeah. Way to go, grandparents. Good work.
So on the flip side, on the positive side, exactly, that we shouldn't go in and go against what the parents' wishes are. So if we have parents that don't allow their kids to have sugar, we should not give the kids sugar. If they don't allow their kids to have screen time, we shouldn't sneak them our phone or iPad. If they have certain standards, we shouldn't go against those. I know, Janie, you're good at that. When the grandkids come up and say, Mimi, can I borrow your phone? The first question always is, go out. Well, you go ask your mom and dad first. And then, by the way, they always say no. Right? Right. But we can't just be like sneaking them sugar, and here's a handful of Skittles if their parents don't want them having that. So we're trying to do better in that, right? It's just easy to be like, oh, we can be the fun grandparents and hand them candy, but I'm trying to be better at, well, go ask your mom if you can have this, or maybe here, let's put it in a bag and you can save it for tomorrow, or things like that.
I love when they come and ask me something that I know for sure their parents would never allow them to do that. And they're like, oh yeah, my mom said it's totally okay. And you're like, yeah, right.
But I think that we need to support the parents in their role as parents and do all that we can, so that then also the parents then trust us and know that we're not going to go be crazy or do anything crazy with their kids that they don't, want us to do. But it develops a trust between our adult children and our grandchildren. Yeah. And so they do need to know that they can trust us and that we will have their back and back them up.
I would just add to that, along those lines, whatever the rules and standards are in a family, the grandparents' role is to try to support that, right? To reinforce it. I still remember a story we heard years ago where a grandmother told one of her granddaughters, you don't have to wait to date until you're 16. And she goes, well, that's kind of our family rule. And that's kind of what the church is. Nah, that's stupid. We didn't make our kids do that. Once again, find out what those standards are and get behind them and support the family.
Right. And if you have multiple children, that is going to vary from house to house, what the standards are and what their expectations are, what their views are. But that's okay. We just do our best and try to support them.
I love it.
Okay. So principle number 3 is if you want to kill your relationship.
We're having the hardest time saying
Why are we doing the negative? We should be doing positive. Is make your love conditional or have favorites.
Yeah. Having favorites.
That'll kill it right from the start. Okay. So on the flip side, as grandparents, we need to love unconditionally. We need to love no matter what choices our grandchildren are making, what choices our children are making. We need to just be on the sideline, be the cheerleaders, be the ones. Parents have to deal with all the daily stuff, the homework, the chores, the doctor's appointments,
but also
the
all
discipline.
The social issues.
They're
the
dealing
friend groups,
with all the heavy stuff. We as grandparents can be the ones who just love unconditionally, that can listen, that can give hugs. We're not involved in all the grind, right? We're not involved in the drama but we can come in, we can give loves and hugs unconditionally. Another thing that I see grandparents maybe do is name call. And by name call, I mean like, oh, they're the talented one. They're the fun one. They're the cute one. They're the athletic one. Oh, they're the one, or choosing kids that maybe are like them, that they have something in common with. And, oh, that's, they do special things with them, but not others. And grandkids pick up on that really quick. They perceive, and I love that, was it Marjorie Pay Hinckley, who all of her grandkids said they always each individually felt like they were her favorite because she treated every one of them like they were her favorite.
Yeah.
And so I hope my grandkids think that. I hope that they all believe that they're our favorites, because they are. When I'm with every one of them, they're so special. Your favorite one is whoever you're with. Yeah, it's whoever I'm with that is my favorite one at the time. So let's not pigeonhole them as, oh, they're the quiet one, or they're the shy one, or they're the talented one. Let's not give them titles. Let's just love them unconditionally for who they are and what they're trying to be. I think, Janie, in that area, as you're talking, one of the things I think of is a toxic grandparent could actually sit and talk to their grandchildren and tell them negative and horrible things about other grandchildren in the family. I've seen that done before too, That goes back to that critical part, huh? Being critical. Yeah. And so once again, we want to be positive. We want to be optimistic. We want to say the best things about everyone. I was just reading something about Lavelle Edwards, and one of his assistant coaches said, in all that we went through for 30 or 40 years of coaching together, I never once heard him say one negative thing about anyone, not a player, not another coach, not anyone, even anyone on the other team, not even the media who was criticizing him all the time. He would just treat them just like everyone. He was just so good that way. And I think that's a good rule of thumb for grandparents. Yeah. And one last thing, I saw somewhere that it says that unconditional love and over love that grandparents freely give to grandchildren, that it doesn't create entitled kids or spoiled kids. It actually creates very confident ones. And I love that every child needs somebody in their life that thinks they're incredible and that they're wonderful and that they can do no wrong. And I think that's definitely a role that grandparents can play. I do too. All right. I would say number 4, if you really want to ruin your family, okay, then just assume the role as the parent. Think that you're like this supreme parent and that you oversee all these younger parents in your family. You're kind of lord of the parents, and whatever you say goes. I love this idea that grandparents are the support crew, but not the commanders. And we've already, as grandparents, we've already raised our kids, right? We've already had that opportunity to raise children. And so this is our children's turn to do that. And they get to make the same mistakes that we made, right? And go through that process. In fact, I know, Janie, you and I have even said sometimes that the only negative when we watch our grandchildren for an extended period of time is that we do have to slide into the role of parent. And we both have admitted to each other that we hate that. We love being the happy-go-lucky, skipping into the house parents that don't have to worry about discipline or asking really anything of them. We just want to love them and have some fun. But you can destroy your relationship really quick. And I've seen it where a grandparent
just comes into the house and assumes the role of parent and starts bossing those kids around. So I love this replacement behavior. Instead of, here's what you guys need to do, or don't do that, or whatever, think of asking your children a question like this. Hey, we're here. Where do you need us? What would you like us to do? How can we help today? What do you need?
Love that. Yeah. Okay. So if you really want to mess things up,
if they're not messed up by now,
point, yeah, go in and demand things from your adult children. Demand their time, demand their energy, demand access to their children, demand them to be at things, demand...
Might as well throw in some guilt. Put some guilt in that pot and stir that around a little bit.
And
too,
this
right?
is one that we see a lot happening in families, is the grandparents are demanding that the whole entire family be at Christmas dinner, or the whole family has to be here for whatever, or they want, equal time with the grandchildren.
The other family was there last Christmas, so you will be here.
Right. You were with the in-laws on last Christmas, so you will be at our house this time, and things like that, where it's just not realistic. We want our kids to come because they want to. We want them to come spend time with the family because they want to, not because they're guilted or shamed or put down or made to feel stupid if they don't show up.
Just guilty, just guilted.
And we've experienced that times in our life where we've felt the expectation to be places. We were in grad school. We didn't have 2 dimes to rub together. And we were expected to drive across the country to be at a family wedding. And we had, and it was such a huge sacrifice for us, and one that honestly that we could not afford at the time. And anyway, that was a whole nother story, but ended up being a disaster. But there's just like, read the room, and understand.
Know the situation. Go, hon, you go first. But I think we're both thinking of, there's a lot of selfishness involved in these demands, right?
Right. If you're requiring kids to be at every family event or every dinner, we want them to have their own life. And so, yes, on the flip side, we want our kids to have their agency, to be able to control their life, to be able to know that, they put their kids down at 7:00 at night. They can't be there. Or I don't know. There's just so many different variables and circumstances, but we need to be cognizant of that. And I always love the quote that always, never expected, but always invited. And so when we have family dinners, when we have family events, when we have Thanksgiving, when we have Christmas, know that you're always invited. You're always welcome at our home, but I will never expect you to be here. If you want to come, we will welcome you with open arms, but we are never going to expect that.
And by the way, what that means is that means that people aren't going to be there every time, because we've kind of opened that door, but we'd rather that happen than be forcing and guilting people into being there when they don't want to be, right?
Right.
Or when they just can't do it.
And we've talked about how we've learned all these lessons the hard way. And I admit that I've done that. I've put pressure, especially, I'm thinking just even this last summer, we had a family reunion in Bear Lake, and all I wanted was a family picture. Mm-hmm. We haven't had a family picture. We have not had everyone together in like 5 years. And I really put the pressure on everyone to be there. And then I had a couple daughters that had to leave early, like a day early. And because
they had things they
had important things. And I did not handle that well. I kind of lost it for a minute. And I felt really bad about that, because that was my issues, not theirs. Right. Yeah. I was just glad that they were there, that we could get our picture, but I should have just let it go and realized, but I'm trying to repent and trying to be better, because now we're going into Thanksgiving and we have to leave, a day early for a work trip that you have. And so life happens. Right. And so we just need to roll with the flow. We need to go with it. We need to understand. We need to be loving and kind and understanding, and not put unnecessary and undue pressure on people and demands on people. And that's how we live and learn. And I feel bad that,
And you've been forgiven. You're good. You're good.
I know. But anyway, yes, we've learned all these the hard way.
Yeah. And you're right. And that's how you learn, right? You make those mistakes a time or two, and you're like, okay, we need to do that differently. So I love this replacement behavior, Janie, for that one, of just make the time that we're with our grandchildren to be easy, to be non-pressure filled, non-stress. I know you're going to talk more about that in a minute, but we want to make it so that we want they want to be there with us, right? I mean, that's kind of the idea. All right, I'm going to call this number 6. If you really, really want to make a disaster of this whole thing, then just talk poorly of the parents, which one of them is your own child, right? In front of the grandkids, right? Just tell the grandkids how horrible their parents are. Even if it's a subtle, small criticism, that can have a horrible negative impact on grandchildren, right? Because children will deeply internalize what their grandparents say about their own parents, right? And I've seen that happen as well, right? We've seen that before where the grandparents just couldn't resist and they unleashed and said some really bad things about their own children or an in-law child. And man, that just does so much damage.
It really just does undermine the relationship between the parent and the child.
Yeah.
And then it ruins our relationship with our own children. And
right.
That's just a horrible thing to do. Don't do that.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's because grandchildren are going to look at their grandparents and view them as very credible sources, right? And go, well, if grandma said it, it has to be true, or grandpa or whatever. And so
I've heard a funny quote that says, grandchildren and grandparents have a common enemy, which is,
right.
their parent. I know, but we don't want to do that. That's a bad thing.
Right.
We want to look at them as a common friend, right? A loved one, not the enemy.
Well, I love this replacement behavior to be the biggest cheerleader that parents could have. And often telling. And I know that we love doing that. Sometimes you get a lump in your throat when you say to your grandkids, I don't know if you guys know or not, but your parents are pretty dang awesome. You've got some really great parents. They're teaching you some incredible things. And I just love being able to say that and look in the corner of my eye and see one of my kids smiling, that feeling that kind of support and that love. But that's our role now, right? We're the biggest cheerleaders in town is what we want to be. We'll call this one number 7. And number 7 is the idea if you really want to mess things up as a grandparent, then use money or gifts as a lever, right? We know that there are grandparents out there who will purchase affection. They can make parents feel guilty because, guys, we spent $10,000 on that last family vacation. What do you mean you're not coming over for Thanksgiving dinner? Maybe even comparing themselves to, well, the other grandparents don't ever do that. They don't do those nice things for you, and yet you're at their house all the time. What's going on? I think anytime money's involved in any kind of family relationship, we got to be careful because when there's strings attached to our loyalty or to where we spend our time, man, there's going to be resentment. And so I think we just have to be really careful there that money is not used in the wrong way. So a great replacement behavior is just this idea that gifts communicate love best, or money, when it never comes with any pressure or any strings.
Thanks, Mark. Another point, the next point, which I kind of along the lines of what you're talking about.
What should we call this, number 8? Yeah.
You mentioned it, is don't compare your relationship with your kids to their in-law parents or to the other side of the family.
Yeah.
We see that in so many different relationships that, we have to have equal time. You were with that family, like we mentioned again a minute ago, that Christmas, you have to be with us this Christmas. Or, you were with them 5 days, you owe us 5 days. Or comparing and contrasting. If you want to kill a relationship really quick,
which is what we're all about today,
do that and put lots of pressure, or tear down the other side of the family, or don't. I hate that. I really don't understand that at all. And I guess because we just have such wonderful in-law families that I don't understand why people would tear the other family down. I guess if they're...
Well, sure there's jealousy and...
Yeah, but that's a me problem. If that's true, if I'm jealous of the other family, that's a me problem, because I look at it as when my grandchildren go to the other family, I'm thrilled that they are going on a trip with them and going to do fun things, that they get to go have. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm glad that they have another set of grandparents that love them and adore them and shower them with love and attention and praise and experiences. I don't think, why can't, I need to be the only parent.
Well,
but I've seen that before.
It's probably a sign of a sick soul, where you can't be happy, for someone else. I think I like what you're kind of explaining, Janie, where it feels like there's a team. And I think for me, I really feel that when there's a baptism or a baby blessing or whatever, and both sides of the family are there, and you kind of feel this great strength and support from both sides. That's how it's supposed to be.
And I consider them family. Like the families that my kids have married into, I love those people, and I consider them family.
Yeah.
I don't consider them some strangers out there that my grandkids go to half the time or whatever. I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful for their influence. I mean, maybe things would be different if they were in jail or evil or, mobsters or something. Maybe that would be totally different. And I know that there are situations like that, where there's dysfunction and evilness and things. But in a normal, healthy family, let's encourage that. Let's foster. The more love that our grandchildren have, the better. Why would we ostracize or pit ourselves against the other side of the family? I think, bring it together and swallow your pride, swallow your jealousy, and just be grateful that your grandkids have more than just a few people that love them. The more, the merrier.
I think that's a great way to look at it. All right, here's the next one. The next one we want to share, that if you really want to mess things up as a grandparent, then take credit for everything good that happens in your family, right? When the grandkids do something great, well, that's because grandpa, he used to hit the ball over the fence when he was a little baseball player, or that's because grandma used to do this, or in other words, we're kind of taking credit for things that we maybe should not be taking credit for. Anything good that happens, we find a way to tie ourselves into it. I think one of the things we need to be careful of is there's two sides of a family here now. So when you tell a grandchild that the reason why they're amazing at this, academics or music or whatever, it's because of our side of the family, how does that in-law daughter or in-law son feel hearing those things? And once again, not a big deal. We don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but I see this happen a lot. I've seen evidences of that. And so let's just be super cool. In fact, wouldn't it be great to tell a grandson that he actually takes after his other grandfather in some way? In fact, I tell our grandson Cannon all the time that I hope he's as big as the grandfather on the other side, his paternal grandfather, because if he'll probably play a professional sport, right? We don't want him to take after me and be 5'2" or whatever, right?
Okay, Mark, because I can't come up with a negative for this. And anyway,
I feel bad that we've been so negative anyway, don't you?
Yeah. But let's take a positive here. And one thing that we can really, really do to bless our grandchildren's lives and our children's lives is pass down traditions and rituals.
Yeah.
All the good things. We can make special things special in our families. Let's do that. Let's have special things that they know that that's part of our family, that our grandchildren they know that every summer we are doing this. Every Christmas we do this. Every time we're with grandpa, he does this. Every time when I think of Mimi, she did this or whatever. Mm-hmm. But let's pass down those special things in our family, because those kind of things are the things that really create in our grandchildren is identity. Yeah. And foster a sense of resilience and self-worth, that they're part of a tribe, that they're part of a family, that they're part of a gang, that they're loved, that we do these things, that they can count on it, that they have memories and remembrances of these things. So one of the silly, just an example, one of the silly things that we do is we call it Mimi Mix. And every time the kids come over, they want Mimi Mix. And what that stems from,
I love Mimi Mix,
is when I was a child, my dad, if we had extra bags or boxes of cereal,
your dad was like the master of this.
Instead of filling the pantry with, an inch of cereal in every box, he would just dump it into one big bucket and mix all the cereal. So you could have a mix of Fruit Loops and Captain Crunch and Grape Nuts and Mini Wheats, and it all would just be, and we called it just, I don't know what we called it.
You called it Chip Mix, I think.
Chip Mix, yeah. I think because of my brother Chip. Anyway, but I started doing that when my oldest grandkids were just really little. When they were watching a movie, I would mix, and I don't know why I started this. It was just one of those silly things that started, and then it became a tradition. And
now they demand it.
And now, and I would throw in some popcorn in a bowl, and some M&Ms, and some Lucky Charms, and some crackers or pretzel, whatever. And it was just this mix, and they loved it. And so now it's always if they come to our house and we're watching a movie, like, okay, we're ready for our Mimi Mix, and so I have to keep my cupboard stocked with kind of rando stuff like that I can throw together, and the weirder the better. But that was just a tradition that they all know and they expect
They totally
now.
expect, yeah.
But there's things like that in our families that we need to pass down. If we have a special dish we always have at Thanksgiving, pass that down and teach the kids why and where that comes from and what ancestor that comes from. Or if there's a special story in the family or a special relative that we can talk about that did incredible things or did hard things or overcame trials, let's pass that down. Let's talk about those things. Let's pass those down, because that really blesses the lives of our kids, helps them feel a sense of identity, a sense of self-worth, and really blesses their lives.
You know, Janie, when you said that, one of the things I think of is the spiritual part. And I really hope that that's been part of my contribution to our grandchildren, is to trying to always make sure that that's something we address when they're together. But it reminds me of the great story of Elder Maxwell. Remember Neil A. Maxwell knocking on the door of one of his children's homes, and it was late at night. I don't know how, I'm sure it wasn't that late, but the kids had already been put in bed. Do you know this story? And when the dad says, "Hey everyone, Grandpa Neil is here," one of the boys says, "So do we need to get our scriptures?" You know? And what a great legacy of passing down spiritual things too, where the children kind of know and expect that, or the grandchildren, that when we're with Grandma and Grandpa, something spiritual probably is going to happen too.
Right. And I love, this is one of our points, is that we need to let our light shine and not be afraid. If we
You want to call this kind of another whole point?
Yeah,
then?
this is another point, is that, yes, let's teach the gospel. And even if our children maybe aren't involved in the gospel or involved in the church, and maybe their parents don't even want them to do anything about it, we can still let our light shine and teach them the gospel without even speaking words, right?
Sure.
We can be great examples to our grandchildren of teaching them kindness, love, charity, all those kind of things, even if their parents don't want it.
May not be, yeah.
We could teach good morals. We could teach values. We can teach honesty. We can teach manners, all those kind of things. But if we do have access and are allowed to teach our children the gospel,
our grandchildren,
children and grandchildren, the gospel, let's open our mouth. Let's not be afraid. Let's teach them what's on our hearts. Let's bear testimony of things. Let's point them to the Savior. Let's help them get rooted in the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes as grandparents, where we want to do so many fun things with them, that we're taking them to Disneyland, or we're taking them to the sports park, we're taking them to the water park, we're taking them boating or whatever. But we forget the most important thing is, and we need to always think, do our children even know that we have a testimony? Do they know that we love the Savior? Do they know that we love God? Do they know that we love the church?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to constantly open our mouth and share whatever we can to influence this next generation.
I agree. I think that's great. You know, and Janie, another one that we've talked about a lot is the idea of just showing up, just being there. And I know that grandparents, once again, are busy, right? I mean, we have a lot of things on our schedule and a lot of things we're trying to manage, and we can't necessarily be at everything, but we should try to be at as many things as we can. I remember once again, my good friend Randall Wright, who we were talking about grandparenting this summer, and he shared with me that he was aware of a family situation where the grandparents actually lived about 20 or 30 minutes away from several of their grandchildren, but yet never, ever showed up for anything. Never. I mean, not a baptism, not a blessing, not a sports game, you name it. They just never, ever came to any of that. But, as you can imagine, as a result, we're just not even influential in any way in their grandchildren's lives, and they were really good people, and but they just never did. So one of the things that I think we can do is just try our very best to be at the things that we can be at.
And like you said, it is crazy, right? We have 30 grandchildren, and so some live out of state, and so we only get to go once or twice a year, if that. But the ones that are here, even, there's so many ball games and concerts and recitals and school plays and baptisms and baby, you know what I mean? But we honestly, I can say we try our best. It's very hard, and I do feel bad that we can't get to more, but we have to show up and make those special things special, especially baptisms and baby blessings and ordinations and things like that are so important, that I think we really, really need to make an effort. we're excited. We have 5 grandkids getting baptized this next year. So starting in January and going all the way through next
and they
fall
all don't
and
live,
October.
They all don't live around the corner either. And so we'll have
we're
to kind
super
of
excited
be
about
fun.
that. But that's what's important in life, is showing up for those big events, but also show up for the small events, the little, school award, or when we can. And sometimes if we have kids that live out of state or, ways away, we have Zoom, we can send a card, we can call and congratulate them, still try to be part of their lives, even though they live far away from us, which I hate. I wish all of our kids, I wish we had a compound and could all live on the same street, but that's not going to happen in this life.
Next life, we're going to go for the big cul-de-sac.
But I think just as grandparents, though, we do the best that we can, and we try to show up where we can. And also in times of need or times of trial, we need to show up and help, even if it's, just showing up to put arms around people, or to say, hey, you guys go out, we'll watch the kids for a couple hours, or to bring a meal, or to do something. But grandparents, that's our role, is at least show up.
Yeah.
So our last point here, and to wrap everything up, I think the most important superpower that grandparents have, I'm going to call
this
it.
is a great superpower.
is to be a blessing. If you go into your child's home, your grandchildren's home, don't bring chaos with you. Be chill, be positive, be loving, be emotionally chill. Like the example I gave last year when I wasn't, of demanding that kids stay at the reunion and causing some tiffs there. Like, don't do that. Like, we need to be emotionally regulated so that wherever we go, we are a blessing, that we can give love, that we can bring in peace into the home, that we can say, hey, we're here to help. Where do you need us? Not here's what I want to do, or here's what you guys need. We just need to go be a blessing and a light, so that when we get there, the kids and our kids and grandkids are excited to see us, and when we leave, they're sad that we're leaving. Not being like, oh, yeah, they're gone, get them out of here. Or like, oh no, here the people are again.
Well, Janie, as you're saying that, it reminds me of a story that I heard from someone personal a few years ago, where they talked about, wouldn't it be great that when you as a grandparent showed up, it was just like almost this welcome relief, like, oh my gosh, so cool. Mom and dad are here, / grandpa and grandma are here. Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. We need it. We need them so bad. Versus, oh no, they're coming. Oh my gosh, is there any way we can get out of this, kind of thing? And we've seen that too before too, right? Where it's like, it'd be so much better if they weren't here. But don't you want to be those, like you said, those superpower grandparents that fly into the scene and can bring some stability and some love,
some help and relief,
and rescue, right?
Yeah, and love and joy. And then when you leave, that they're sad that you left. Yeah. And again, we're still working on that. I'm not going to claim that we are perfect. Our kids probably are like rolling their eyes at us.
They're rolling their eyes at this
like,
podcast,
oh please.
Right
And we are not claiming to be perfect, but that's our goal, right? That's the kind of grandparents we wish, and parents that we want to be and hope that we will be one day.
Right.
But I think that's a goal that we can all shoot for. And so I think on our LDS, let's do something to make that possible, that we can be, be a blessing to our children, grandchildren. Maybe we can all look at one of these points and say, oh, I need to do better in this area.
Yeah.
And I know that we can do better in several areas. But let's be a blessing to our posterity. Let's be a blessing to our children, to our grandchildren, so that,
And Janie, that may be a good way to extend what you're saying. Is just, why not ask our kids ask our children, how could I be more of a blessing in your life? And let them talk and let them share with us. I'm sure we could do that to 8 children and get 8 completely different responses.
Absolutely.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for letting us talk about one of our favorite topics, not just family, but grandparenting. And like Janie has emphasized, not even claiming at all that we're the best or anything like that. We love it. We want to get better at it. And these podcasts help us get better too. Everyone have a great week, and we look forward to being with you next time.